If you don't fight for your right to move, you're not going to be moving and you're going to be physically ill and emotionally miserable. This is something that women my age need to hear. I mean, it's liberating. There's nothing wrong with you. It's not your fault. It's just your responsibility to take action now and do something. 15 minutes a day is all it takes to start feeling better. Many women work with me because they want to lose weight, and that's fine. We do that. But what happens is after 2 weeks of training, they come back to me and say, oh my God, I feel so energized. I feel so strong. I stand taller. Everything is different. And it really works that fast. We just need to shout it from the rooftop.
This is A Joyful Rebellion, the podcast that explores that moment you realize the life and success you worked so hard to create didn't come with all the fulfillment you thought it would. I'm your host, James Walters, and I want you to be the author of your own story. Each week, I connect with people who inspire bold answers to the question, what do I do now to create a life I love? If you're ready to start answering that question for yourself, you're in the right place. So let's start a joyful rebellion. Kim Rahir, thank you for joining us on this joyful rebellion today.
Thank you for having me and for the great work that you do.
Thank you. I am really stoked to have this talk because I looked at your information and I just want to read this for everyone who's listening. I just want to read this verbatim. So I'm going to go to your bio. The first line just sent me over the moon. It was so great. It says, Kim is a 60-year-old mother of 3 who was diagnosed with MS 10 years ago and decided to ignore her doctor's advice and muscle her way back to a happy life. And that's exactly what a joyful rebellion, it's deciding what you're going to do. And sometimes it doesn't go right along with what society says. Sometimes it doesn't go along with the best advice that you've been given by others. Sometimes you have to find your own way to your joy. And that's what you did. And I would love to know what it was like 10 years ago when you got that news and you got the doctor's opinion and whatever they told you needed to be the next steps. What was going on in your mind and your heart that led you to take a different path?
When I try to describe the situation I found myself in at that point in time, the word I always come up with is darkness, because it was a very dark moment. 2 years before my diagnosis, I had an autoimmune spell that put me into the hospital for 6 weeks, where I was paralyzed from my hips downwards for 3 weeks. It was a one-off called a syndrome Guillain-Barré, which, is not totally uncommon, but very scary. I had gotten over that. I had learned to walk again and everything, and I had sort of been given a second chance, and then they pulled the rug right out from under me with that diagnosis. It was a very low blow. Darkness is the first word that comes to mind, and also a little bit of disappointment. I was never someone who had this perfect life plan, what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go, what I wanted to be. But still, you have an idea of who you are and what you want your life to look like, more or less. And when you get this kind of diagnosis, multiple sclerosis, there is just no knowing what's going to happen. You have no idea. You could go blind, you could be in a wheelchair, or you could have nothing. You just don't know. And that felt scary, dark. The disappointment is also with your body, because when you have something autoimmune, it's sort of turning on itself and you think, what the hell? Why? How can this happen? There's not like you smoke for 20 years, you get lung cancer, and you are super overweight and never move, you get heart disease. But this thing, it just comes out of nowhere. So there's no, there is a bit of family history for me, but I was not really ready for it. And because it was so scary to look ahead, I really learned to just focus on one day at a time, to focus on one moment. Because looking ahead scares the living daylights out of you. The doctor told me I needed lifelong treatment. That's already something quite difficult because you have to obtain the treatment. Depending on where you live, it's extremely expensive. You have to get sorted with insurance. If I, at that time, thought in 20 years, will I still have to inject myself? Where am I going to get it? Who is going to be my doctor? That was just too much. It was just too scary. So I thought, no, I'm just going to focus on today. I fought with the doctor when he said I needed lifelong treatment, because you get your official diagnosis after the second relapse, not after the first one. My second relapse was so mild, I hardly even noticed it. I said to the doctor, come on, maybe I'm getting better already. I mean, why do we have to do this? He insisted. He was not used to someone asking so many questions and talking back at him. I had to accept that. I started injecting myself 3 times a week, and it has unpleasant side effects. You feel like you're getting the flu. You know, the injection sites get very sore. But the one thing at the end of that discussion, he got really impatient, and I don't blame him. I talked to him for a long time, and he was very stubborn, and then I had to give in. But I did ask him at the end, is it okay to exercise? And that's where he went like, you got to be careful. He didn't say, well, you could do this, or you could do that, or he didn't say, prefer, do something that is, I don't know, do cardio or do whatever, as some kind of advice. No, it was just be careful. It was just like scaring me. Right. And he didn't want to be responsible. I was lucky because later I had an appointment with a nurse who showed me how to inject myself. She said, well, exercise is great for MS because it makes you fatigue resistant. I thought, well, that's something. That was my green light. And I had this, and it's something that I'm still wondering about today. I had this urge. I just wanted to go to the gym, lift heavy, and become really strong. I think it goes back to the time when I was in hospital, 2 years before, when I was paralyzed. Because in hospital, you are so powerless. You have zero power. You cannot decide when the light is on in your room or off. You cannot decide when you want to wake up. You can't even decide if someone is in your room or not. You're just like they're this thing that everybody, people are nice and medical personnel, they're like very caring, but they're also very busy, and you're just part of their schedule. When you're paralyzed and you can't even walk to the toilet or the shower, you really have zero power. My reaction to lifelong treatment was like, oh, I have to give up my power yet again. I don't want that. This desire to become physically strong was coming from that experience. I wanted to feel strong, self-determined, and be able to trust my body again. That was important for me. And that's how I started lifting heavy. And you could do it incrementally. I didn't go out and deadlifted 200 pounds or something the first day. Because I used to be a journalist. So I got myself a book and went by the book and watched out for proper form and all these things. But I got better very quickly. And that's something I am always so passionate to share with all the women out there who think that all is lost or it's too late. You can get better quickly with strength training because it gives you so much confidence. It doesn't matter what you do. You could do body weight exercises, but you're overcoming resistance in that training. And that gives your brain this intimate knowledge that you can overcome resistance, and it makes you more confident. I think this aspect and this improvement of my mental health played a big part in what happened afterward.
What was the time frame between when you first got your diagnosis and when you started really getting serious about lifting heavy and resistance training?
I think it was just a few weeks.
Okay.
Because my diagnosis, well, the first relapse I had, I still have numbness in my hand, so that I really do have some damage from that, but that was it. I could walk, and after my first experience, I really appreciate being able to walk, so I felt I had gotten away. In German, we say I had gotten away with a black eye. I waited because the second relapse, you get the diagnosis, you get the treatment, you get an infusion of cortisone for 3 days, which makes you really weird and wobbly. So I waited for a few weeks, but that was it. It was not months or years. It was a few weeks, and I went out to get it.
So that was the beginning of your journey, because not only did you start lifting, you went on to become one of the European Masters Weightlifting champions. And what was that journey like?
Yeah, that's a bit of a longer story, but I'm going to make it as short as possible. So I started lifting heavy. I felt really good. I got strong, and we moved again. We were journalists. We moved every 4 years. My diagnosis was in France. We moved to Spain. I joined a gym. I told nobody that I had a mess. I did not want that label. Because I remember for myself, do you meet someone and the first thing they tell you, or maybe the second thing they tell you, is they have some kind of illness, you sort of put them in that box. And I didn't want this, so I didn't tell anybody. I was just someone going to the gym, lifting heavy shit, and worked with a PT who was very happy to work with me, because so many women go to the gym and just walk on the treadmill or spend an hour on the elliptical. And I was there. I wanted to do pull-ups and deadlifts and stuff. One day he said, would you like to try Olympic weightlifting? I only remembered that from when I was a kid. I watched the Olympic Games with my dad, and those were sort of overweight guys in weird leotards, like, lifting
Right.
lifting barbells over their head. I remembered that. But I said, well, yeah, I'm going to give it a try. And he told me, what to do. There's 2 exercises in Olympic weightlifting. One is the snatch and one is the clean and jerk. Both are ways of putting the barbell overhead. One is in one go, and the other is first you put it on the shoulders and then you lift it overhead. So I tried and I totally sucked because it's very, very difficult. It's not only physical, it's also physics. You have to outsmart gravity. But I loved it. I loved the challenge. This is also something that is very helpful. You need to focus on every single lift. You cannot think, oh, yesterday or maybe. No, because it's a very fast, explosive movement, you have to focus fully on just what you're going to do next, which I think is very healthy for our mind to have something where we're really in the moment and in our body. I liked it so much that I actually left the commercial gym and joined a pure weightlifting club. I'm very lucky because there is a great one here where I live in Madrid. I was training with them for 2 weeks when they said, great that you're here. Do you want to compete? Compete? They're actually a competitive club. So you go there, you lift and you compete in, local meets and whatever it is. But that's the idea. I said yes. At the time I was 55, I think. In my 30s or 40s, I would never have said yes. I would have thought this is just another obligation, another stress factor. And my attitude had changed. I thought, wow, yeah, let's try this. This is going to be exciting. I started in local meets. Then I checked my numbers and I saw that I had the numbers to compete at a European level. And I did. After a few years, I actually won, which was absolutely amazing.
That's a really good story of taking your health into your own hands, which made you feel more independent and strong, not only physically strong, you were getting physically stronger, but it did a lot for your mental health and your emotional health. And now you're taking it and you're not only proving to yourself what you can do, that you've always been capable of, but you are proving to everyone around you, like, hey, this diagnosis is not stronger than me.
Yes.
And how did that feel?
It's just like a great gift. I do not claim that you can heal or cure MS with weightlifting or anything at all. I think that because I was asking so many questions, because I was listening to my inner voice, I found the way that was right for me. I think this is a very important part where we really need to make sure that what we're doing is aligned with what we want and need and what our values are. In my case, I so wanted to hang on to my power that I chose the path that was right for me. I was sharing with my Spanish neurologist, because I was still getting treatment when we arrived in Spain, that I was weightlifting. He said, that's fantastic, and I could give hopes to so many people. After 3 years, he told me I could stop using the treatment if I wanted to, which is super unconventional.
Right.
Usually when you start this treatment for MS, you don't stop because you're afraid you might have a relapse and there might be damage to your body. He was very up to date. He always knew about the latest research and everything. And one day he said, you want to stop? I'm going to support you. If you don't want to stop, I'm going to support you too. And I said, yes, I want to stop. Come on, let's give this a shot. And he told me something else, which until this day, I love him for this. He said, should you have problems and need treatment again, it would not be this treatment that we would be giving you, because we're now having doubts about its effectiveness. I find that's a very courageous and great gesture, because usually a doctor would sort of say, yeah, I didn't make the wrong choice, or he would feel that maybe he would be sort of, his authority would be questioned or anything, which is not true, because we keep learning and learning. It was the thing to do at the time, and apparently now it's not. Because he shared it with me, it gave me courage, because I could believe that I was better and not because of the treatment. And I think that's also, for me, I see everything as a gift. Even though it sounds weird, since I was paralyzed in hospital, every step that I take, I am grateful and happy. And I'm aware that walking is just great. It is fantastic. I see all of this as a gift. I listened to my inner voice, so I had something to do with this evolution, but I feel mostly grateful that where I am today, that I was given this sort of second shot at life.
And it impacted your life in bigger ways than just when you got that diagnosis, you had to start thinking differently about your body and how you were going to move forward to hopefully direct how the next steps of your life were going to go. But then it got bigger when you left journalism and you decided you were going to help other people and help impact hopefully their health outcomes, not necessarily medically, but there are a ton of people who, if they could only figure out how to get healthier, get the results they wanted, and maybe get some real advice, because there's so much conflicting advice out there. So to have someone that they could trust, and that's what you started becoming for other people. And you decided, let's not just work for everyone. Let's concentrate on women who are in middle age, who need specific information. They needed specific types of encouragement. What led you to concentrate on that community?
It happened organically. When I started, I just wanted to show people that it's good to train for strength and that it's good for your health. I soon discovered that this is a group of people I can relate to because I'm part of this group. I also realized that they are not getting the attention and the help that they need. So many women tell me, when you turn 50, you become invisible. And that's how they feel. And then, the whole menopause story that, it's coming up now. People are talking about this more and more. But until very recently, it was a matter of ridicule and making jokes about hot flushes and not taken seriously. And until this day, when a woman goes to see a doctor and says, I feel exhausted all the time, I have low moods, I have no motivation, I can't sleep, I'm anxious, I'm agitated, I don't recognize myself in the mirror, I'm gaining weight, I don't know what's going on, I think 9 times out of 10, the doctor's going to give that woman an antidepressant. They're not going to ask them, how is your life? How do you spend your days? What kind of self-care do you practice? What kind of stressors do you have in your life? No, it's just take this and that's it. And I hear it time and time again. And this is something that fires me up because it doesn't really help. Some people need antidepressants to function, but it's given out like candy these days, and it doesn't solve the problem. If it solved the problem of mental health, we would have found out about this. It's just prescribing more and more drugs when there is such a simple solution. It will maybe not solve every single problem, but looking into your lifestyle, are you actually moving your body enough? Are you looking after your muscle mass? And are you making a physical effort daily in some shape or form? Because our bodies and minds are a big system. The way we live our lives now is not how we were built. We're not optimized for sitting all day. It makes us sick. When you reach perimenopause and your body is going through this change, everything will be harder and worse. And you will think that this is punishment that's fallen from the sky from one day to the next. You feel horrible, but it's been like years and decades in the making. Then there's another point that women my age, I want to share with them that it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Our world is built in this way. If you're not intentional, deliberate about moving, you're going to be sitting all day. The environment wants you to sit all day. Work at your computer. All your entertainment is streamed into your home. Food is brought to your doorstep. If you don't fight for your right to move, you're not going to be moving and you're going to be physically ill and emotionally miserable. This is something that women my age need to hear. It's liberating. There's nothing wrong with you. It's not your fault. It's just your responsibility to take action now and do something. And this is something that I receive with my clients. We start very easily. 15 minutes a day is all it takes to start feeling better. Many women work with me because they want to lose weight, and that's fine. We do that. But what happens is after 2 weeks of training, they come back to me and say, oh my God, I feel so energized. I feel so strong. I stand taller. Everything is different. And it really works that fast. We just need to shout it from the rooftop. There's no need to despair. It's never too late. There's always something you can do.
I'm glad you said that because so many of the conversations I have here on the podcast on different topics come down to a couple of things. Some of the older wisdom that we've always heard is still very applicable in today's modern time. Just like you said, if someone is a certain age, they go to the doctor and describe symptoms of depression, no energy, things like that, instead of asking, well, did you go out in nature? Did you get some sunlight? Did you move your body? Have you created any situations where you need to work through them to keep your mind sharp? And if the answer is no, well, you can't fight nature. And nature wants those things for you. It's our nature as people to be active, to be moving. But like you said, this society right now does not encourage that. It encourages just sit in one place, focus, and produce and consume. There's a lot of consume messages that we get as well. I had a different conversation just a little while ago, completely different subject, but it came back to what's our normal human nature. And so many of those things are the things we need to thrive are not really asked of us in our society right now. And so I'm curious, now moving into that, you work primarily with women who are, what would you say, like 40 to 60? Is that the main
right
range?
into the 70s, actually.
Okay.
But from 40 onwards, yeah.
You said you got some feedback just after a couple of weeks. They stand taller, they feel stronger. Have you recently had a client who said, I started your program, I started doing all the things, I felt amazing, but then I got tempted to get the shot everybody's talking about that makes their appetite less and they start losing weight quickly? What do you have to say to those people who are looking for a quick fix? Because quick fixes fall apart quickly too.
It's a tricky subject and very nuanced. That's a problem these days because we never have time or space or the patience to go into things with nuance. But podcast great for this because we will have time to talk about this. Now, one thing I want everybody to know, these shots make you eat less. There's no magic ingredient that speeds up your metabolism or burns away fat. It just makes you eat less. The basic problem in our society is that we are eating too much. That's just a fact. There are some people who struggle really hard with eating less. The solution is not to say, come on, stop being so greedy and lazy, just eat less. For some people, it doesn't work. They have a genetic disposition. They have something called food noise in their head all the time. And I've talked to those people. It's really 24/7. They are thinking, what can I eat next? What can I eat next? Those shots are really good for those people because they help them start losing some weight, then be able to move more and feel better about themselves. What happens when you just take the shots and then you stop? Most people gain the weight back. So what we need is, in any case, whether you want shots or not, you need to change your lifestyle. You need to get into a habit of eating in a certain way, controlling your intake, and moving as much as you can. Because I don't think in today's world, when we tell people move as much as you can, that they're ever going to be able to overdo it. I think it's going to be very hard. So if for people who need or can really benefit from these shots, they need lifestyle coaching to go with it if they want to make those results sustainable. That's really crucial. And that's probably for the majority of people who do not have this food noise all the time, who just are overeating because it's part of our culture. What this drug does, it makes you eat less. And that's a part of my coaching where we go back to actually finding out what our body needs. When are we hungry? When are we not hungry? I teach my clients to sort of eat less, but without trying. I know that sounds crazy, but it works. We just have to reconnect with our body. If we eat 24/7, and I think the average American has like a feeding window of 15 hours a day, our bodies are not made for that. And you will never feel physically hungry because you're always feeding the machine. So you have no feedback from your body, whether it's had enough or not. You totally lose that connection. But you can build that again. You can find out how much is enough and start controlling your intake without forbidden foods or crazy diets. You just need to slow down. It's a big one. Slow down and pay attention to what's going on. It's extremely hard to overeat slowly.
I would think a lot of women come to you with that goal of wanting to lose weight or feel better, have more energy. And maybe in their mind, they have a preconceived idea of the journey you're going to take them on. But what happens when you start bringing up things like the importance of weight training for a woman who is in middle age? And do they look at you kind of funny and they say, no, I don't want to bulk up. I want to lose weight and I want more energy. And then you have to go in and explain how these things work together. What is that conversation like with someone who hasn't really done a lot of the study and maybe looked into exactly what they're going to get with you?
Yeah, it doesn't really happen because people, when they come to me, they have heard about me, they know my stuff. So this conversation you're mentioning, that's sort of happening in my marketing. When you raise your hand and want to talk to me about if I can help you, you know that I'm the muscle lady and that I believe in muscle. And that's fine. I'm not for everyone. Those women who understand, and more women say, oh yes, I have to look after my muscle mass, because it's sort of getting into the mainstream that losing muscle mass is like really dangerous for your health. So the strength training part is not a big discussion. The tricky part is to find out where exactly to start for every single woman, because that's crucial when you're not 20 anymore, when you have high mileage joints. Everyone has their own history, different limitations or strengths. So what we do is I really assess all my clients for their strength, their mobility, their fitness status, to make sure that I design a training for them that is challenging enough, but doesn't overload them or injure them. Because that's a problem when it comes to midlife women. They don't get enough attention. There's wonderful strength training programs on YouTube, and they're really great, but they are not for older women. You know, there's so many things, like, say, you're a 45-year-old woman, you have sort of put a bit of weight on, the clothes are getting too snug for your comfort. So you start Googling, what do I have to do to lose fat? What are you going to find? You're going to find HIIT, high intensity interval training, which is exactly what it says, high intensities. Now, if you haven't moved in years, you can't do that. You can't do it in a way that would be effective for fat loss, and you can't do it in a way that would not put you in danger of injuring yourself. HIIT is the most effective exercise for fat loss. There's no doubt about it, but it's not good for you to get in shape. HIIT is for people who are in shape, and then they can use it. And that's what happens when you get these mainstream programs that there's nothing wrong with them, but they're just not right for a specific person with their history and their limitations, maybe injuries or illnesses or whatever it is. This is really important in midlife, that you start exactly where you are. When you want to go from A to B, you need to know where's A, and then you can start moving. Otherwise, you just sort of turning in circles, or worse, getting hurt, which is really not a good idea when you're not 20 anymore, because you take longer also to heal.
Right. And I like the phrase high mileage joints. I feel those myself a good bit. So if you have someone, I know you said everyone is very different in the way we start. So what would it look like, the very basic person who comes to you, raise their kids are leaving the nest, and they haven't really taken care of themselves in that way for maybe 18 or plus years. They come to you and they're ready to. They have the time. If their kids have left the nest, they've got tons of extra money to join a gym, to buy. They could buy a whole another house just with gym equipment in it. No, I'm facetious, but that's what it feels like when a kid leaves the nest for me. How do you get them started at the very basic, something that won't scare them off?
Yeah. Again, it depends. For some women, it will be just a very gentle activation, because our ruthless brain, when we don't use our muscles for a long time, sort of puts them offline. You wouldn't believe how many people who have been sitting for decades cannot consciously contract their glutes, their butt muscles.
Oh.
In fun, we call it gluteal amnesia. If I can see that someone can't really, because the quality of a muscular contraction depends on the quality of the signal from the nervous system, from the central nervous system. When that connection is offline, we have to put it online first, just by gentle activating exercises, getting a feel. It's the same like with the eating. Reconnect with your body and move it very gently. That could be something as simple as pelvic tilts, for example. Go there very slow. And then someone who still has this connection, because sometimes, women always think, oh my God, I can't lift heavy. I'm going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, when in fact, they've been lifting toddlers and groceries like, there was no tomorrow.
Right.
And some of them still have this muscle activation and this strength. And I would start them, for example, with wall push-ups. A wall push-up is a great thing because it mimics the whole movement. It's not what they call a girl push-up where you go on your knees. You want to do the full movement. It's a full body movement. But if you start with a regular push-up, you're going to be so frustrated and overwhelmed because it's hard for women to do. So I love the wall push-up because your brain can learn the exact movement. The load on your joints is less because, your elbows, your shoulders, they don't carry quite as much. So part of it is carried by your legs, and you can approach the exercise. Step by step, we'll take it down, always a little bit lower, always a full body exercise. And depending on where you're coming from, you can go to a full push-up in something like 3 months, which is very empowering and a big moment of celebration when you get your first push-up. So this is how this works, is body weight exercises, and I scale them to the level of difficulty and strength necessity that is right for the person.
So it's pretty customized approach, and then they go do that and then bring the feedback, and then you adjust from there. What is a typical length of time someone would work with you to get them started and get them onto their goal? Is there a set regimen?
It totally depends. Usually I work with women for 3 months. In 3 months, you can get a very good baseline of foundational habits, and that's what you need. My idea is that, when you've worked with me for 3 months, you know not only what to do, but you start doing it. You get your steps, you get your strength training. You are much more in touch with your body when it comes to eating and everything. You can practice that on your own from 3 months onwards if you want to. Many women stay with me longer because they love the training, the community, or feel they need to deepen and refine nutritional habits, for example. They stay a bit longer. The foundational skills, you can get a very good grip on that in 3 months.
When people do come to you, do you see a commonality in the nutrition part, the maybe myths you have to dispel or things that you have to kind of reintroduce them to concept-wise that is going to be different from how they've been operating in the past?
The most common ailment is overthinking, because we are so bombarded with stuff, I can't eat dairy, it's really harmful, or, I need to stop eating meat, or the big culprit, bread. I mean, if you eat bread, a food that is worthy of that name, like bread, that doesn't contain anything but, flour and salt and yeast and water, bread is not a problem. There's so much superficial information, sound bites that get stuck in people's brains. For some, it's really hard to get over that because they have to so internalize this idea that bread or meat or, you could put any kind of food there depending on, what was your latest Google search, sort of dangerous or will, cause problems for you. When, if you stop all that overthinking, just imagine how did humans survive over all those years? Definitely not by stopping to eat carbs at 6 p.m. They were eating carbs whenever they could get their hands on it. But that's a big problem because some people call this an evolutionary trap. We are programmed to want to eat all the time because that's how we survived. And this programming, it's really hardwired into our brains. It sort of catches up with us and becomes dangerous. There's food all the time. And it's not only available, it's pushed on us. So that's where you want to go back to basics. You just want to build simple meals that contain a source of protein, tons of vegetables and fruit. And that's it. That's all you have to focus on. Then you have to start working with that primal brain that we all carry that wants to eat all the time. And it's not a matter of pulling ourselves together or being like great heroes of self-control. It's more like observing, noticing, naming what's going on. Oh yeah, I want something crunchy now because it's 5 p.m. and I've been sitting at my desk for 6 hours and my brain needs a reward. Maybe I can also go for a walk instead of crunching on something. That's what we have to do. There's this one myth that keeps coming up, and I see many influencers use this, and I think that's a bit predatory because it makes women imagine that they could achieve certain things. It's like, I can't lose weight. I'm not eating enough.
Mm.
And that's against every single physical law of the universe. It does not happen. When you fear that you're not eating enough, there's just two questions that you have to ask yourself. First, have I been losing weight steadily without necessarily wanting to? Or am I not able to finish a workout or end a run? Those are signs that you're not eating enough. Not losing weight does not mean that you're not eating enough. And it's really, I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit obsessing about this, but I see like influencers and people on social media all the time telling people, oh, you have to eat more. You're dieting so hard. You don't want to diet hard. That's true. But if you tell people you have to eat more, you're giving them the wrong impression. You must eat more, probably more vegetables.
More of the right things.
Yeah, that's a big misconception that I come across quite a lot.
Have you seen a pattern with people who come to you? I'm sure you've been doing this for a while, so you've got a lot of different people coming to you for different reasons. You started this journey when you got a diagnosis and you sort of did your joyful rebellion against the doctor's advice, and you didn't take it as a prison sentence and just accept it. You said, no, I'm going to do everything I can do about it. Do you find that the people who come to you now, have they had something significant like that happen with their health or in their lives to make them want to start on this journey? Or are they more just curious about improving their health?
I think for the vast majority, there is this pivotal moment, but it's not always external. Sometimes it's, oh my God, I'm pre-diabetic. Oh, yeah, my numbers are not good. I have to do something. That happens quite a bit. Or I had a lady recently who said, my sister is getting Ozempic injections and I'm so frustrated because I can't lose weight. I'm thinking of doing the same, but I'm going to give myself one last chance of trying it without injections. I think the pivotal moment can also be in your head. Sometimes women tell me, I just knew that I couldn't go on like this. I had to change something. And that can be triggered by all kinds of things. But I think there must be some kind of tipping point or moment when you decide that you're going to get help. I wish it were more common in our culture, it's becoming more common, but even more for women and weight loss, to realize that you need help with that because it's hard. It's simple, but it's hard.
So many things that we talk about on the show when it comes to living through your joyful rebellion, they are simple, but they are not easy.
Absolutely. For many women, when it comes to weight, there's so much shame and guilt also to attach to this, that this feeling, I should be able to do this by myself. Our whole environment is set up. The odds are stacked against us. One really important differentiation that I'd love to make, it's, yes, you need help, but you don't need help because you're a weak person or because you are undisciplined or lazy or you have no self-control. The things that you need to do to be in shape, to get in shape, to stay in shape, to eat right, to exercise, I think they're all skills. They are not sort of character qualities. They're not like, you're a virtuous person and you're a lazy person or something. I think they're all skills and we can learn them. We must learn them. It's not going to happen, like you wake up one morning and you have this huge motivation. It's great, and it's going to carry you through a few days or maybe a few weeks. But at some point, you need to learn skills that you practice and that give you control. That's, we're coming back to that power thing.
Right.
You keep your power because you have skills. You know how to do things. And that can be something like you know how to build a good meal, or you know how to react when you have a bad day and you don't want to work out. These are all skills. There's no magic. And I think this is good news because anybody can learn those skills.
That's true. And sometimes they just need someone to guide them through it. And that makes me curious, how many, would you just say off the top of your head, how many of your clients that you work with who come in and they take everything really seriously and they get the results, how many of them tried this on their own, maybe a few times, and failed before they came to you and got the guidance and started seeing success?
All of them.
I was going to guess, if I had to say, it was probably over 95%, because I know even me, I'm like, yeah, I'll try this. And then I realized, no, I don't have the skills and knowledge, because if I did, I would probably be there by now, because you've got to have skills and knowledge. You also have to have the desire and the motivation. And like you said, whatever that pivotal moment is, and it's different for everyone. And that's truly the whole thing that this podcast is about. It's about what happens after that moment. What do you decide to do? Do you get angry and frustrated and determined, and then you're just going to show the world what you're made of and then go in that direction? Or do you get really quiet and then start gathering the information and then all of a sudden blossom with using that information into a completely new person? So that's reassuring to hear all of them. All of them tried it, and then they realized they needed some guidance.
Yeah, and so many women have tried all diets known to men. It's crazy. And I don't blame them. Actually, I quite admire, people check it out, you find something, you say, I'm going to try it. I mean, it's better than not doing anything. But then you can become a serial dieter where it's always, you're just looking for this one thing that you're missing. Like, oh, it's the carbs. Oh, it's the nutrient timing. Oh, it's this. And you think that there's just one thing that if you can just nail that, you're going to have it. And what's tragic is, if you try that once or twice, maybe 3 times, but then you should sort of catch on to, maybe it's not that. Maybe it's sort of simpler, but more foundational. Like simpler but bigger. It's not this one thing of eating super food berries with breakfast or taking
Right.
turmeric or cinnamon or apple cider vinegar. I mean, it would be great if those things would really move the needle. And there's nothing wrong with them, but you need the big,
right.
the
They're not
rocks
the
first.
magic bullet. And we're always, in our society, it feels like we're always looking for that one thing. But again, it's like we said, you can't fight nature. And even though this is really simple, it's not easy. There's no one thing. It's a combination of those things. And that's what's most important to remember, but it's also the most frustrating thing about
Yes.
health. If someone's listening to us and they want to know more about what you do, they want to connect with you and connect with some more of your teaching and information, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can go to my website, which is kimrahir.com. So my name with .com. And actually on there's a free assessment that you can take, a health and strength assessment, where you can find that point A. You can realize where you are at right now. And not only about, can you do push-ups or something like this. It's sort of like holistic, sort of putting into perspective your fitness for your daily life. So how do you actually cope with what life throws at you on a daily basis? And when you take that, you get a result, and I give you some pointers, what you could do next and where you could start. That's on my website, kimrahir.com. And then with my name, you can follow me on social media, where I share quite a lot of tips and thoughts, and also my weightlifting adventures.
That's good. Kim, thank you so much for the conversation. Is there anything that we didn't cover today that you think might be important for people to hear?
What I want people to understand is that there's always something you can do. And I myself was raised in this spirit of when something went wrong or wasn't right, then everybody would ask, who did this? Or how did this happen? And that's totally useless. Wherever you're at now, the question I want you to ask yourself is, what can I do now? That's all that counts. And there's always something that you can do. It could be really super small, but there's always something you can do. And that's the one thing that's going to help you move forward. Don't worry so much about what happened and was it fair? Whose fault was it? Your responsibility is to ask yourself, what can I do now? And I think that's empowering, and that will help, move ahead.
All right. I think that's a perfect way to end things. Kim, thank you so much for being here on A Joyful Rebellion.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me today. If you've enjoyed this content and are thinking about ways to share your story or even get more joy out of your life, I have a free ebook that I'd love to share with you. It's called Plotting Your Joyful Rebellion, and I designed it to be a 5-step field guide full of guerrilla warfare tactics to help prepare you to overthrow any of the parts of your life you feel the call to rebel against. Go to ajoyfulrebellion.com and click on the link right there at the top to claim your free copy of the book. Again, that's ajoyfulrebellion.com or simply hit the link at the top of the show notes. What sort of rebellion are you plotting right now? I'd love to hear about it. Connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, or through the website at ajoyfulrebellion.com. Thanks again for listening today, and be sure to stop by next week for another episode full of joyful rebellion.